All right, all right, all right. Welcome back to WMAC Now with your host, Chuck Stevenson, coming at you with a big fight review. We're going to Tokyo, Japan for 1 century. We're going to the one atomweight division, which everywhere else would be the strawweight division. Angela Lee versus Xiong Jingnan. The rematch, their first fight, was back in March at One A New Era, also in Tokyo. Uh, Xiong came away with a fifth round TKO over Lee, up one division at 125 pounds. Um, so this was, but this time it was Xiong coming down to Lee, the division where Angela Lee is the champion, and challenging for her title. It was the reverse the last time. Uh, and before I get into it, let me say this was a fight that was not without some controversy. And we'll get to that in a minute. But first, let me go over some of the notes on this. Uh, One thing I noticed right away in this fight was compared to the last fight, Xiong Jingnan came up, came out in the start of the fight, and she was way more relaxed than she was last time. I mean, she was letting her hands go early, and she was smooth. She was fluid. Like, she didn't have her shoulders bunched up like she did in the first fight. And you could even kind of tell that she was more relaxed as she was walking out. She was kind of dancing a little bit, getting her hips moving, and she had a swagger to her. So I'm not surprised that she was more relaxed this fight. And I think having the confidence of winning that first fight helped a lot. And another thing I noticed was that Xiong was a lot stronger in the clinch this time. Angela Lee controlled a lot of the clinch in the first fight. And Xiong just showed superior strength in the clinch, and she was constantly fishing for the underhooks and getting them and turning out. And if she wasn't, getting Lee up against the fence in the clinch herself, then she was, creating distance and getting back to the center of the cage. Now, Lee did not get her first takedown until about roughly 3 minutes and 30 seconds of the second round. But it was towards the end of the round. Xiong basically kept her locked down, didn't really allow Lee to get any offense until like maybe the last 5 to 10 seconds. Lee got herself loose enough to land some knees to the side of Xiong's head, but Xiong blocked most of them with her arm. In the third round, Lee got a big hip toss, about 1 minute and 45 into the round. She attempted a scarf hold arm lock, and on the replay, it looked pretty darn deep. It was on the left arm of Xiong. And then Xiong got her arm out and got into a scramble. Lee took her back. And Xiong spent the rest of the round really defending. Basically the rear naked choke and fighting it off and fighting from her back. In the start of the fourth, Xiong dropped Lee with a big left hand, caught Lee off balance and dropped her. And this was an example of one thing I noticed about Lee the entire fight. Lee had her chin out and open the whole fight. Xiong was just hitting her in the head constantly. And Lee kind of has a big head, so it's a big target to hit. Then finally get to the fifth round. Xiong seems to be ahead in the stand-up, and in the clinch from what I saw, Lee tried to take down. Xiong stuffed it. Lee still had a hold of her leg, but Xiong kind of followed her to the ground and was landing some hammer fists to her leg. Lee was able to sneak out the back and stand up with Xiong. Lee grabbed Xiong around the waist, picked her up, and suplexed her. And from there, Lee was able to immediately take her back. And this was part of the first controversy I'm going to get in, because everyone thought suplexes are illegal in one championship. And you can hear Xiong Jingnan's corner protesting. I don't know how much was said or what it all was said, but there was one point where the commentator stopped talking long enough. You could hear one of her cornermen yell, You're not following your own goddamn rules. Very loud. I'm surprised it didn't scrub it out in the editing. Um, so Lee's on Xiong's back. Xiong's trying to fight the hands and fight off the rear naked choke. Eventually, Lee was able to get the second hook in. She finally got the RNC rear naked choke locked in. There was less than 20 seconds left in the fight. Xiong fights it, but Lee is has her, bottomed out on the ground. You can barely see it. Like, I had to replay it like 3 times because the camera angle was so bad. Plus, the ref was in the way, and the ref was constantly yelling, "Do you give up? Do you give up? Do you give up?" And I'll get to that in a second too. But Xiong, you can barely see Xiong. She does 2 little taps on the mat, and the ref stops it at 4 minutes 48 seconds for the winner by submission due to rear naked choke in the 5th round. 12 seconds left on the clock. Your winner, Angela Lee, who retains her, quote, atomweight, unquote, title. So that was the fight. Now, I want to talk about some of the controversies in this fight. And the biggest one, and it was all over social media immediately. I mean, immediately, because I was on Twitter at the time, and there was a lot of talk about it, and One Championship's reaction just made it all the worse. The suplex. Is it legal or not? Because at first one had banned all suplexes. Okay? But they seem to change their rules whenever it suits the outcome they want. There was a Facebook post by Chatri Sityoton when they first enforced this rule. And I didn't bring up the article at first, and I don't want to look for it in the middle of the video. But Chatri Sityoton said that any and all suplexes are illegal in One Championship, and all variants. Well, apparently now they're saying that because Xiong didn't land on the back of her head, and she landed on her arm or shoulder first, that it was legal. Okay, so let me bring up these pictures here. Okay, first, and these are bad screen caps. I had to pause the video and take a screenshot on the iPod from a GIF. I probably should have done it from the actual video. I used a GIF. So yeah, she does, her arm hits first and her shoulder. But here, let's move to the second picture. And you can clearly see her head smacks off the mat. So the arm might have hit, but the arm and shoulder wasn't really providing any cushion. So if the idea of having a suplex illegal is to prevent people from getting spiked on their head, then why is it now, oh, well, it was only illegal if it's to the back of the head? And I mean, Lee defended it as well, said, well, we studied the rules really well. And then Chatri in the post-fight press conference, that's where he started saying the back of the head. And it's funny because everyone was saying, well, that's not what he was saying before. And people were pointing out the Facebook post, which was posted in an article by MMA Junkie within the first 12 hours after the event. That Facebook post was taken down. Okay, this was a bad PR move by One. Just a bad PR move by One. Okay, you basically got caught red-handed, and the MMA Junkie article says the exact quote in it, and then it provided the post, and then it says post has since been deleted by the user or whatever. That's just dumb. I mean, that's basically saying, well, we got caught red-handed, but we're going to change it anyway. So this just makes One Championship look bad. Okay, whether or not you want to see Lee DQ'd, and I have nothing against Angela Lee personally or professionally or anything. I have nothing against her. But rules are rules. If you're going to have a rule saying no suplexes allowed, which personally, I don't agree with the rule at all. But if you're going to have it, you have to apply it equally. And coming straight out of Chatri's mouth was, all suplexes and all variants have said are illegal. Well, it doesn't matter where you land. That was definitely a suplex. It was a belly-to-back suplex. Doesn't matter whether she lands front side, back side, whatever. That was a suplex. Even the commentators called it a suplex. Okay? And who else knew that that was allowed then, if it's only to the back of the head? Because it sure didn't seem like Xiong's corner knew. And they should know the rules just as well, too. I'm sure they studied the rules just as well. I mean, she's a champion. So that was just an all-around bad look for one championship right there. And then the next I want to talk about, and I'm going to talk about this some more. Probably my next live show, I'm going to talk about all the stuff that one does that makes them look bad, just because the end of this fight left some bad taste in my mouth. But the next one is one's, I guess he's like their head referee, Olivier Coste. This guy sucks, okay? Every time a fighter's in a submission and they're fighting for it, he's practically in their face. Do you give up? Do you give up? You give up? You give up? He repeats it so much that it almost starts to sound like an order. Like, give up, give up, give up. Okay, first of all, stay out of it. Okay? Let the fighter work through it. If they're going to quit, they're going to tap. That's obvious. If they go unconscious, and it's it's your job to intervene. If they tap or go unconscious, that's your job to intervene. Other than that, stay out of it. Shut up. Okay? Your job is to enforce the rules, not to see if a fighter is going to give up to a submission. You're not supposed to be constantly asking them, do you give up? You give up? You give up? You give up? He's a crappy ref, basically. And because one championship doesn't use athletic commissions, all the referees work for them. So that's a conflict of interest in itself, too. All right. So now I talked enough about the controversies. Let's get back to the fight. Li won. Good for her. She stayed the champ in her division that she cuts more weight to get down to than Xiong does, and was still looking like the bigger fighter in there. So she's still champ of her division that she way outsizes everyone else in. Let's talk about things to work on. Okay, for Xiong. Takedown defense is much improved. Still needs to work on it, though. Because if they do a trilogy fight, she can't afford to get taken down. Also, submission defense. Li's very good with submissions. And if Xiong fights who I think she's going to fight next, she's up against an even bigger submission wizard. So, needs to work on that submission defense. Clinch work, vastly improved. She wasn't getting controlled in the clinch nearly as much as last time. In fact, she was usually the one that was taking control of the clinch and causing the separations. And then working on scrambling too, because the failure in the scramble is what allowed Li to get her back and suplex her. Now for Li, head movement, head movement, head movement. She keeps her head in one spot. Chin out and open the whole fight. That's how she fights. And she's lucky she has a strong chin, but that's going to cost her eventually. So she needs head movement and to tuck her chin. And she needs to work on her footwork because she's way too flat-footed in there. Xiong looked so much better in the stand-up. Now, that's not to say that Angela didn't get her own licks in too, because Xiong had a big hematoma here, and she had a nice one under her left eye. But Xiong, for the most part, was finding her punches very easily. I wish she would have worked on the body more, but when you have a big head like Angela Li's, and the chin is way up there and open, you got to go for it, so I don't blame her. Now, matches to make. For Angela Li, stay in 115 for one or two more fights, but I think her next fight, it should be Stamp Fairtex. Now, Stamp Fairtex is the one, quote, atomweight, unquote, Muay Thai and kickboxing champion. Now, she's never defended that kickboxing belt in over a year, but she has made her return to MMA. She's now 2-0 in MMA. She's about to fight B. Nguyen. I think she gets past B. Nguyen. So the next fight to make is that two-sport champ versus MMA champ fight. I think that's the fight to make. That'd be real big for one, especially if they do it in Thailand or Singapore. As for Xiong, she'll go back up to one quote-unquote straw weight, 125 pounds. She can take on Michelle Nicolini. I think that'd be a very good stylistic matchup. Striker versus grappler again. Nicolini's striking isn't even half as good as Angela Lee's, which tells you a lot. But on the ground, she is a submission wizard. So Xiong will have her hands full if she can stop the takedowns. Now, Nicolini doesn't have as good of takedowns as some of the other fighters that Xiong has fought. And Xiong has the better boxing. I still think it's a classic striker versus grappler matchup, though. So I think that's the match to make for Xiong Jingnan. All right, that's the fight. Long review, I know, but there was a lot to talk about with this one. And it was a long fight, so there's a lot to talk about there. I mean, these 5-round fights that go the distance or almost the distance, they're the hardest ones for me to review because I always watch fights at least twice. That's almost an hour combined of watching the two fights. Plus, the second time I watch, I got to slow it down so I can do some more analysis. But let me know what you thought about the fight in the comments down below. Likes always appreciated. And hey, what are you waiting for? Subscribe to WMMA Now, the best, fastest growing women's mixed martial arts dedicated platform on YouTube. Hit that bell for notifications, and we'll see you next time.